The data market in Africa is forecast to see double-digit growth, with mobile subscriptions set to reach over 1 billion consumers by 2017. 4G technology will play a crucial role in this huge growth market. So now is the time to set LTE strategies in Africa. Joining us from our Cape Town studio is Bill Herman. He's the chairman of the 4G African Broadband Forum, which kicked off earlier in the city this week. Bill, thank you so much for making the time to join us. What is the fundamental difference between 3G technology and LTE, and what differentiates LTE as the technology of choice to deliver broadband?
Yes, 4G is all IP, so it uses the Internet Protocol, which is what we do all our emails on and our search engine. So it's all IP, and it's coming right now. Voice will be all IP. It's much faster. So your downloads, when you download a Facebook picture, you won't have that little spinning wheel anymore using LTE. So your downloads of video clips will be very, very much quicker than on 3G.
Bill, what are the cost implications for the migration process that would have to be borne by operators as they migrate from 3G to LTE?
Well, the frequencies are slightly different. They're in 1800 megahertz and 800 megahertz, which is coming from the TV, digital TV dividend. But the costs are just basically base stations. They have the towers. The 3G networks will run in parallel, so it will fall back onto 3G HSPA. But LTE at the moment is mostly for fixed into dongles, into laptops. Mm-hmm. But the data rates are amazingly fast. At this last 2-day conference, companies were doing demonstrations, Telkom South Africa, showing data rates that are up in the 5 or 6 times faster than what we're used to. But mostly it's fixed. At the moment, there's only 2 or 3 mobile phones available, the mm-hmm. Apple iPhone 5, the Samsung S4. So companies busy making, but the pain points at the moment are spectrum. The regulators haven't issued the spectrum. Getting the broadband fiber capacity, which mm-hmm. Companies like Seacom and have laid to the coastline, getting that into the hinterland is still a challenge. Getting that, and South Africa and Kenya have done great jobs in Nigeria, mm-hmm. but many other countries still don't have fiber to the BTS, fiber to the base station. The last mile will be wireless, and it'll be LTE, 4G, and 3G.
Before I get to the question of how an LTE era is actually going to impact on the device landscape, you spoke about infrastructure. In terms of the hard infrastructure that needs to be put down, optic fibers and the like, where are we as a continent in terms of being abreast of that particular development?
You know, in Africa, we have sort of 8 or 9 shining light countries. So countries like South Africa and Kenya and Tanzania and Nigeria, Ghana, have rolled the fiber. The most expensive part of fiber is construction. It's digging a trench. So it's not that expensive, but it needs broadband. Microwave can do it up to a point, but you need to run fiber to the base stations. And the penetration of the internet right now in Africa is very low. It's some countries down at 2-3%. South Africa is fairly high at 19%, together with Mauritius and Tunisia. Mm-hmm. But in general, Africa does not have. So imagine living without the ability to do a Google, use a search engine, and to have an email address.
Right.
And that's how 600-700 million people in Africa live. They don't have that ability which we all have.
I mean, you speak of Kenya and South Africa as one of the countries that have been the first to move off the mark. What has Kenya and South Africa gotten correct, and what should other African countries be focusing on from the perspective of a policy perspective, an infrastructure investment perspective, to ensure that they have at least some chance of catching up with these front runners?
Well, yeah, basically governments must make it easier for fiber companies to run the cable. The way leaves to dig up roads and dig up trenches, and also to prevent 5 companies running 5 cables when one cable would do it. So right. That's what's happened in Kenya. There's a company called Liquid, based actually part of Econet in Zimbabwe, but they've run cables all the way from SADC countries through up into Kenya and Tanzania. We need more companies like Liquid to do that. Globacom in Nigeria have run cables up into Ghana. This is terrestrial land cables. Government. We also need it to be treated as a utility, almost like electricity and water and sewage and roads.
Right.
We need to have fiber to empower the people to get more knowledge, to understand what's happening in the world.
What are companies doing, Bill, in terms of responding to an LTE era? Are we seeing an amendment of business models as this era begins to take off?
Well, there'll be much more working from home. There'll be much more, you'll have informed, both the governments of Egypt and Libya both were assisted, the downfalls were assisted by using SMSs. It went viral. And if you're running a despotic country in Africa, you must be very careful, because the people in Africa are much more informed and know, and it's almost impossible to block and control it. So, which is better for everybody. And SMS is a form of data. It's just rather expensive for the amount of data you send. But things are going video. LTE makes it quicker and better. And there's like Chinese companies like Huawei doing wonderful jobs to get the regulators to issue spectrum for TD-LTE, which is what's happening in China, which have the low cost. So we get the low cost coming out of China. It's something to look forward to.
You speak about regulation. Of course, there must be quite a number of regulatory considerations that apply to emerging market conditions. What are the key trends in terms of regulation that you're seeing coming out of an LTE era?
Well, the regulators are moving more quickly in the good countries, in the winning nations. So what used to take 5 years to regulate on, and of course the spectrum and the needs are changing, but the regulators meet together. So we have a SADC group, I think it's called TRASA, but they get together, the 14 or 15 countries, and they talk about best practices and what they're doing in their countries. Remember, the wireless spectrum is a valuable resource, and it has to be regulated. It can't be a free-for-all. And it needs to be used, used to be used for the population and people for telecommunications. So television is moving out of analog in the 700-800 megahertz very soon, by 2015. All of that spectrum will be made free and available for Africa. We need lower frequencies because our villages are sparse and rural. So we need LTE in 800 megahertz and 1800, not in the higher frequencies like they use in Europe and America.
Of course. Well, before I let you go, we did park the question on the impact on the device landscape. How are devices taking advantage of the LTE era that is about to take off?
Well, at the moment, the devices are mostly 99% are dongles plugging into laptop computers. The mobile phone, smartphone technology is still more and more companies are coming to market. So by the end of this year, instead of being 2 or 3, there's going to be 30 or 40 smartphones. The prices are coming down. There's a initiative by Microsoft called For Africa, between them and Huawei with a smartphone that's down at $150. And my forum is working with them to microfinance that phone, because even then a poor subsistence farmer in Africa can't afford $150. He needs to be able to pay it off, and he doesn't have a domicilium or a fixed paycheck, and yet he needs to use the phone to make money. That's the important thing. This phone is like having a wheelbarrow or a small truck to deliver his tomatoes with. It needs to earn a revenue, and the lender of the microfinance needs to accept that. And I'm talking about in all of Africa. All 1 billion people need to have access to be able to buy smartphones to use to broaden their knowledge on how to grow bigger and better tomatoes or maize or cassava.